And Bernhard, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bernhard Kowatsch. I'm the head of the World Food Program's Innovation Accelerators. It's our global innovation unit. We support startups and nonprofit innovations with the goal of disrupting global hunger. And we're actually also running accelerator programs for different other SDGs. So like solving other global problems, for instance, also like primary healthcare in developing countries. So like really grateful to be here and like talk about blockchain innovation in particular.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to toss the first question out to Irene, but it's really for the whole group. And it has to do with the use cases. For several years, we've seen many different types of use cases, from agricultural to financial systems, financial services. And the question is, how do we take those use cases and get them ready for mainstream use, make them scalable? Irene, please, but then the other panelists, please chime in.
Thanks, Andrea. And yeah, scalability is very much at the top of mind in anything that we do. And we started in accumulating a number of use cases in 2019. They were ranging from helping alpaca producers in Peru certify their product and getting a verifiable certificate and more value for their product, to use cases in trade with the customs units or agencies of several countries, or in financial inclusion, getting digital identity and digital wallets working together and accessing together with financial institutions, giving access to finance to people in poor neighborhoods.
Many use cases. So it sounds like in the IDB, you've got a pool of many different use cases. And you must have a plan then for scalability.
Exactly. So accumulating all of that, the realization was, okay, how do we accelerate the deployment and the use of blockchain and mainstream it? And LagChain emerged. LagChain is an alliance which now counts with more than 60 partners, and we were able to bring together players that traditionally had not really worked together, but forming that ecosystem that were through which we could really enable others to leverage in a very effective, efficient way this technology, and is now counting with more than 650 entities interested in deploying nodes on the network, 81 entities running nodes, and more than 60 use cases now on LagChain. So what does it do? It provides a pure tech infra. It has a common protocol, LagChain networks, and this is an inter-American blockchain on Hyperledger Besu. So it's like a public good as a publicly permissioned underlying infrastructure that is open, and it has a governance layer.
So I'm going to stop you for a second, Irene. So it sounds to me like what you're saying is, if you're going to have scalability, you need an ecosystem. Would that be sort of what you're sort of?
That's exactly it. And it's you need trust, and you also need the tools and the infrastructure, and that's what we did. So in a way, it was going from planting individual trees to being able to promote the forest, and that's what's happened since 2019 until now. And now we have this common infrastructure that is open to be used and leveraged, including by some of the use cases that, for example, Bernhard is promoting through WFP.
So that's thank you for that segue. Bernhard, could you elaborate, please, and tell us what your experience, and also the notion of what does it take to get from use case to ecosystem to scalability?
So I'll acknowledge I might be biased as a founder myself and like running an accelerator right now, but like I'm a big fan of like human-centered design and like lean startup thinking. So like really trying to solve a problem that people have rather than like using tech because it's cool, right? And I think so,
even though it is cool.
It is cool for sure, yes. But like being cool is only helpful if you really solve people's problems. And like I think that mindset of like building something that people love, right? Like building products that people love, like then you will solve their problem. And I'm with Irene, like, yes, in terms of scalability, you do need to think about scaling early. So there needs to be some pathway, and technology or like is definitely one of them. Ecosystem could be another one. But like really trying to find something, co-developing with people. And when we go into like inclusion as well, it's like, yes, we need to make sure that the solutions we're bringing to people or that we're developing are actually solving their needs. And I mean, we've done that both for cash transfer type systems or wallets that are making collaboration easier across different agencies. We've worked on smaller farmers like interactions, but like there's lots of even like micro work that people do online and then they cash out in cryptocurrency. Like there's lots of different things that you can do when you solve people's problems.
Candace, thank you so much for that. That's really helpful. I know that Candace, you some of this must resonate with you because I know this is sort of your area as well. Could you comment, please? You agree with what Bernhard is saying about the solving the problems and making people love the solution?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think that there is some risk with technologists that they fall in love with their technology. And what we need to solve real world problems is to think about the user and to make the user experience such that it is solving their actual problem. Whether they understand cryptography, whether they understand how a blockchain works is really not important, because I can tell you that, I have a car and it gets me where I need to go and I don't really understand. I understand when I need to take it in and get it fixed, but I don't need to understand really what's under the hood. And so I think that there are a lot of new experiences for people if they're even if they're used to using their phone for some sort of payment. We're very focused on cross-border payments. So my bias will be that, but things like private key storage and private key recovery, that should not be a complicated process for the user. It may be super complicated and sophisticated from a technology point of view to make it easy, but those are the things that we really need to make sure that we're not a technology looking to solve problems, but we are actually looking at those problems and the users and meeting them where they are.
Candace, can I follow up with you, please? I know there are several projects that are being developed on the Stellar platform. Can you speak to one or two of them that where you think some real problems are getting solved?
Absolutely. So there's one company building on the Stellar network that's called Leaf Global, and they focus on refugees. It's available in Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya. And it can be used by anyone, but I think the refugee use case where people may be fleeing and don't want to have the risk of carrying cash on their person and being able to get onto a blockchain network and hold their value in a stable coin. So a token that's backed by the local currency, and to be able to transact inside that network on the Stellar blockchain. They don't charge any bank fees. The Stellar network transactions are less than a penny, far less than a penny. You can do about 100,000 transactions. So making it easy. And I think one of the really, to my point of meeting the users where they are, Leaf Global has developed this without requiring you to have a smartphone. So if you just have a mobile phone, a feature phone, you can still use this solution with just being able to have text messaging and not have to have an app and the complicated smartphones that some people need. So that's one example. I have other examples, but I don't want to monopolize. I'm happy to.
I do want to follow up with you on that because, you think about refugees and they're leaving and they have very little. And the question is, how do they convert their fiat currency into something digital, or how do we make sure that they're able to get, if they're using stable coins, for example, that they're secure? What are some of the, do you have some insights that you could just share, just some details, just to put add a little more color? And then I'll ask as well. So while you're talking, I'll ask Irene and Bernhard to start thinking about some illustrations as well in their experience.
Yeah, so I think Bernhard mentioned the collaborations, and I think that that's part of this, is building an ecosystem. So I know that Leaf Global has partnered with mobile money providers in those countries, and so being able to connect and interoperate, that's something that's really critical in the Stellar ecosystem, is that you can interoperate with the fiat world and the digital world, so you're not confined to one or the other. And so the Stellar network makes it very simple to issue these stable coins. You don't need smart contracts and complicated layers. It's a few lines of code to issue a fiat-backed stable coin. And then it makes it much more accessible to folks who.
So in the different currencies in the different countries, the network allows them to issue stable coins through the network. Exactly.
And there are a number of different countries. I mean, USDC is issued as sort of like the most known stable coin, but there are Naira and Kenyan shillings, and so in all of these different locations. And it's a fintech. It's not the Stellar Development Foundation doing any of that. It's just the network is available and easy to build on and to issue those stable coins and create that interoperability and ease of cross-border payments, and or simply just savings, right? It could also be just a matter of having a more secure way to save, even if if a user doesn't have a cross-border remittance need.
Thank you. Irene, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, I love the concept of making things simple, building things with the user in mind, and the changes that we're seeing now on Web3 and the more and more decentralized system and decentralized finance that is privacy preserving, but that it's really allowing for digital assets to be embedded in everything. I think it's not so difficult to think that, okay, not just like the conversion into digital currency for a migrant, but also digital credentials, diplomas, IDs, health certificates. For example, if you take the Venezuelan migrants that have suffered so much over the last few years and have tried to establish themselves in many of the other countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, these other digital credentials are also essential in order to access a new job. And so tokens as well, both financial and non-financial, and having all of that in a digital wallet, this is going to be totally normal. But we are in this transition phase. So I think building the ecosystem of partners, the trust and the understanding, and making it very easy to use for some is normal, like some digital native startups that collaborate with us. It's very, very normal. They are part of LACChain and they are developing the use cases. But for others that are critical to make this happen, for example, foundations that are working really at the last mile with people that really need these tools and these services, you need to bring them in. You need to make it very easy. So have the technology ready, but not be in love with the technology. Think about
Irene,
how really it's going to be deployed.
Can I just follow up with you on something to give us an example? I know when we spoke earlier, you talked about working with local partners, and you gave me the example of the trees and planting trees. Could you share a little bit about that, please?
Yes, so I'll use an example of one of the cases that is running on LACChain. The example of Coop Can. This is a cooperative in Peru, and they have producers of alpaca, and this is a very, very important product in a key agro product in the agro industry in Peru. Onboarding them to help their members and their producers be able to prove international importers the quality of the product, to be able to help producers get the digital certificate that recognize them and provide them with identity information, work history. This it has required an ecosystem of different players, some tech, some non-tech, like the co-op that has the trust of the members to work together. And soon incorporating digital payments, so these producers can be rewarded directly when somebody buys their alpaca through or today many intermediaries that export it. It's something that it's completely doable, but it requires different parties to collaborate and work together and make the use of this technology very easy.
And I think you had mentioned that the technology is the easy part. It's getting everybody else involved too. That's where it takes a lot of energy and a lot of resources so that you can benefit from the value of having it on the blockchain. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I think we have cases also, I mentioned earlier in customs, for example, where the need for transparency and for efficiency is huge. And so we, together with the World Economic Forum, actually, we had this program called Cadena, and it's an alliance of 8 customs administrations from Latin America and the Caribbean to enable real-time decentralized exchange of information about companies that are clear to receive benefits at the border. Before, only a monthly exchange of information was possible, and now this is possible real-time, and it's on the blockchain mainnet. The technology was the easy part. Getting all of these organizations and this alliance of customs administrations to work together was the real challenge, and I think we'll see more and more cases as they become more known and people see that it can be done.
And clearly the benefit of putting this information, bringing the people all together, they have the information that's authentic, that's certified in real time, and that will translate to benefits for the people on the ground, right? The people who may be left out of certain financial systems, the unbanked, and folks that really need to, who can get better prices because they have more real-time information and so forth.
Absolutely.
Bernhard, can you add to that, please? And if there may be an illustration, some cases that you can discuss, or some projects that you think are showing that we're sort of headed in the right direction, that we're not
Absolutely.
just doing pilots. We're actually moving towards a place where we're going to see this more mainstream, and what you think the focus will be.
Absolutely, and I think there's no better way of actually showing it's possible than to show something that works at scale. And
absolutely, yeah.
One of the examples I want to mention is called building blocks, and the basic idea behind this is it's actually about cash transfers to refugees, in this case of the World Food Program and of other aid organizations, where every month 8 organizations would put value into a blockchain account, and then a refugee they can go into a store and they just purchase their groceries like they would normally, and at the checkout they pay with the blockchain wallet, and it's something that's really about the collaboration aspect also on blockchain here, whereas instead of having a refugee having 5 different bank cards from different aid organizations, now one blockchain wallet, and every organization can just actually put the money into that, and then depending on where this is, we're actually using this right now by over 1 million people are using this right now.
This wallet, over 1 million people.
Over 1 million people. So
where are they located? Can you give us just some context there?
It's Syrian refugees in Jordan and Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. And the same technology was used after the blast in Beirut, the port blast, where to coordinate aid transfers to people right there after the blast. And and I think it's also a good example of the first pilot of this was only with 100 people, and then 5 months later it was already 10,000. Another 6 months later it was at 100,000 people.
So already there, it's already working at scale.
It's working at scale, and we've transferred $320 million of cash to people to go into stores and purchase food. And this is something that because sometimes people are saying wow, blockchain, you're only talking about developed countries. It's also possible to use this in very, very remote settings. Of course, technology means there needs to be a benefit. And I mean, in this case, we also save like 98% of the banking fees. So that's probably like $2.5 million so far, which is actually going to show like, how do you pay for the technology and like, why is it useful, right?
Bernhard, can I ask you, well, this is it's pretty tremendous, this very exciting project that you've been working on, but how does it work for the merchants? I mean, how do they have to be part of it too? They have to sign up as well, right?
Yeah, no, and like this is where it is something that is interesting, where it's about like actually understanding the problem we're trying to solve, right? Like, so these merchants before would already have had refugees go to their stores and purchase food, and the refugees would have had different bank cards, like one from us, one from a different other agency. And essentially now we are making that whole process more efficient. The collaboration between the agencies is better, and it's also more transparent. Like in what happens in most of the where we operate right now, we actually have virtual blockchain wallets, and then we transfer fiat currency once per month to the retailer. And that's because it's agreed with the central bank and also with the finance ministries in those countries. Now, could you use cryptocurrency? You could, if it's of benefit, if it's of value, right?
Interesting.
Andrea, I just want to build on that particular case, because Candace also mentioned the cash transfers to migrants, and I think so. What we've seen also, we are putting it to use for cash transfer programs in Colombia and in Panama, and this is also enabling already. It's a way of securing hundreds of millions of transactions a year for vulnerable populations with tokenized conditional cash transfers from governments to individuals. And I love it because it's, in a way, it's, the pandemic was super tough. The pandemic has been really, really tough in Latin America and the Caribbean and in particular. But at least there are countries that at least use the opportunity to transition to do digital cash transfers. And this is the next level of adding more efficiency and cost savings, making it more secure and faster. So it's kind of letting this crisis not go to waste in that sense. And I think we can definitely build on that, but it requires players, in this case is Citibank, to work together with us. They were the ones who tested the payments to providers in Latin America and the Caribbean using blockchain with us and using this new payment channel. And I think we need more financial institutions to reimagine their role and work with us in this new way.
So that's interesting. That's great. Candace, I'm kicking this over to you because do you agree with Irene that in order to get mass adoption of digital assets for payment systems, we need to partner with larger financial institutions, or are there, or are there other options, or maybe it's one of many? What are you seeing at Stellar?
Yeah, so I think that larger financial institutions very much may have a important role, but I think that the beauty of blockchain and open networks is that everyone can build on them. So particularly when you think about, and I think we've all been talking about how we need to have local businesses solving, local entrepreneurs solving local problems, that the idea that a Leaf Global, which is much smaller than Citibank, I can assure you, I don't know the numbers, but that they have recognized a problem and they're creating a solution, I think is...
you don't necessarily need the larger institutions. Sometimes there's a place for them, and sometimes
absolutely
that you don't need to be limited if you don't have that partnership. Like, it's great if you can have that partnership because you've got their technology and you've got their reach, but that's not the only way.
I agree. I think actually, to me, what would help that more is if governments and policymakers and regulators could bring more clarity to the regulatory frameworks and work across borders to make sure that we don't create a bunch of different siloed systems of this works in one country and something else works in another country. So I think that actually is, creating. So we
need to open the regulatory freeways to allow better transmission and ease of use of digital assets across borders without getting tangled up in compliance problems. But I have a question, Candace. Yes, I'm
sorry, and I don't want to imply that I think that compliance needs to be. I think that it just needs to be more clear that there is room for, obviously compliance is critical when you're talking about people's value, and so it's a matter of bringing clarity and bringing frameworks that are focused on these issues of access, inclusion, and being able to create competition among those who are trying to solve these problems. So I think that that's really important for regulators to think about as they tackle this new technology.
Well, I have a quick question. Thank you. I agree with you that we want the regulators to know that these are some of the solutions we're trying to put together. So as clarity is provided, that it doesn't you want clarity to make it easier for you to work with whether it's the unbanked or people who are in need and the people who are the recipients of all these really tremendous projects. I remember, Candace, you mentioned to me that there was a solution, and we always talk about the final mile, how the on-ramps, the off-ramps. And I remember you had mentioned something to me about MoneyGram, which is a fairly large organization and can you just talk a little bit about the group that works with MoneyGram? Because again, it's not necessarily a Citibank, but it's an established organization. I thought that was pretty darn interesting. If you could tell us a little bit more.
Absolutely, yes. We are in pilot. We're going back to pilot phase. I know you said we, but
no, but you start with a pilot. But
exactly.
I think it's important to see how do you get from here to there. And I just mentioned this notion of the ecosystem really takes it's a heavy lift, right? But once you have all the parts in place, that's really how you get the,
right. Exactly.
So
the MoneyGram
pilot.
Right. So the MoneyGram pilot, which is live here in the United States, is just that. It's connecting the traditional rails with the blockchain. And so it enables a user to go into in the future, but you go into a MoneyGram agent and you are able to convert your local cash into USDC and the reverse. And so what that means is that I can have my own wallet, a self-hosted wallet, and I can interact with MoneyGram to be able to get in and out of this blockchain ecosystem, which is a barrier for a lot of people who are unbanked, right? So right now, it's pretty easy for someone who has a bank account or a credit card to be able to go and buy USDC and then be able to use all of the various services, whether that's for cross-border payments and remittances, or whether it's for savings, whether it's for all of these other products that are being developed. But if I do that, and as this pilot expands to other countries, I would be able to, on my own, once I have that USDC in my wallet, send that to someone in Colombia, and that person can take the USDC in their wallet in Colombia and go into their local agent on the ground, MGI agent, and be able to convert that into their local currency if and when they're ready to cash out of the USDC and get back into the fiat world. So it's really an on and off ramp, and it makes it a lot easier. And it's an on and off ramp that involves cash. I guess that's the main differentiator there. And MGI, as we know, have agents on the ground in so many different countries. So
not too dissimilar from sort of the model Bernhard was talking about, empowering individuals with their own digital wallets to be in control. Bernhard, can you elaborate a bit more either on the project that you were talking about, or maybe a different project, just to give us more illustration?
No, I think this is where, like, specifically when we think about, like, maybe people who are unbanked or like also some of the most vulnerable people, like they might be, for instance, farmers. Like we have been working with it's an NGO, actually. It's called Producers Direct, that are looking at farm to fork transactions and actually creating a marketplace for that on blockchain. And what's interesting, like in a lot of developed countries, you would do that because you want to know, like, the traceability or the food safety of, like, I want to know where my lettuce Candace is coming from. Now, why we are interested in that is because we want to make sure that the smallholder farmers get a fair share of the profits and they get paid the right price for what they're actually selling. And it is very interesting because like this is where you then get into like who has access to technology type of questions. Even if you have a smartphone, like, maybe the smartphone is in use because your children, because of COVID lockdown, now have to actually do home learning with that smartphone that you actually have. And it's something when you're thinking about these types of solutions, like that is a challenge in itself. We've also worked on another project together, like on digital micro work, where we actually train up young people who otherwise have low income jobs or do manual labor, doing like data cleaning, picture annotation, to do things in the global digital community, and through doing that micro work and then getting a payout in cryptocurrency, now they are part of a global digital economy. And those people have not had any bank account before this. Like now, this is when you're talking about like how we might use this to the benefit of those people who are otherwise left behind.
Interesting. We're getting there towards the end of our session. So, Irene, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about some of your partners. I know you have many, many partners. Some are government, some co-ops, some private partners, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. I'm seeing some notes here. Okay, so maybe you could just share a bit, and then we might have time. We have time for some questions from the audience. So I'll let you answer that one, and then we can.
Thanks, Andrea, for the question. It actually allows me to also comment on what Candace you said about the allowing other players and entrepreneurs and companies to be the ones who provide a solution. As the Innovation Lab of the IDB, and also completely aligned with the Vision 2025 of the IDB Group, we support entrepreneurs. We are a big investor in startups across Latin America and the Caribbean, and we absolutely think that most of the very promising solutions that are scalable actually are coming from there. And so sometimes it is a collaboration with established players, and sometimes it's not necessarily that way, but they do have a central role to play. So we do work directly with entrepreneurs, and one of our partners is IOV Labs, actually, and that was a coincidence, with Andrea. The project in financial inclusion in Argentina, for example, where it's similar to a use case that Bernhard mentioned, and it didn't just involve IOV Labs, but also the organizations in the local community and the NGOs who work in the Villa 31 and these neighborhoods that are working with the people that actually we want this project to benefit. So the partners range a lot from those that have the relation with the communities that we want to work with and benefit, and those that are the technology providers, and often again, they are amazing entrepreneurs like the founders of IOV Labs and teams like the one that you're part of, Andrea, and then also established players. They include and the government. So it's the government, why the issue of interoperability that we talked about is critical for any scalability. And if we want to have as the foundation, the national digital IDs, then it becomes very important.
You have to have the cooperation of government. So what I'd like to do is, I have one quick question to Candace. I think you can probably come up with the answer pretty darn quickly. And then I would like everyone to sort of make a prediction for where we're going to be, like moving forward, what your vision is. So the question from the audience, Candace, has to do with the MoneyGram case. I know it's in a pilot, but they were asking about how do you handle AML issues, the anti-money laundering issues. Is that something that's come up? Maybe you have limits on the amount of cash that can flow back and forth, or something along those lines. But
Absolutely.
If you could just comment briefly, and then I want everyone to sort of give their prediction, sort of where we see, how long is it going to take and what's your prediction?
Yes. The very short answer, so we have time for that, is that MoneyGram has been handling AML issues and KYC and running those checks from the beginning of their services. And so because the agent is involved, the on-the-ground agent who's regulated and licensed in that country, that's where the AML takes place, is by the MoneyGram agents. And in the same way that it does when someone's using cash to then send a remittance over the MoneyGram rails, it's the same, it's using the same processes. And in fact, enhancing those processes, which I think is something that's often forgotten in the blockchain world, which is when you partner with the Elliptics and the Chainalysis and the other blockchain forensics organizations, you actually have a lot more information, or access to a lot more information about that user than if you just have someone walking in with cash who wants to send some money overseas, right? You can see what that wallet, the history of that wallet and all of the hops before this transaction. So it's a combination of their traditional AML, KYC with a layer of analytics on top. Thanks.
All right, Candace, you're in the hot seat. Everybody has like 30 seconds to 45 seconds. What's the future look like?
I think that we're on the cusp of things really taking off. I think that what Irene just mentioned about digital identity is one of the key areas that everyone needs to focus on. And then I think the other piece that we've all touched on with these use cases is offline solutions. So I think with the focus on governments who are looking at solutions with respect to CBDCs, I think there are a lot of pilots. Whether those get off the ground or not, I don't know. But I think the learnings from that process and the attention that all of these central banks are placing on it will focus on these really critical issues of interoperability, digital identity, privacy, and offline solutions.
Excellent. Bernhard, you're next.
And if I can add, like I am hopeful that there will be a plethora of solutions that will not forget that there's people like still with feature phones and who also have access to like new use cases because of technologies, and because smartphones will become a lot more widespread, how that might change people's lives, and also like in remote communities when we're talking about this. And I'm thinking like this is where like focusing on how we really use that technology for some of the most vulnerable people is something that I'm really, really looking forward to.
Excellent. Irene.
Well, yeah, I think all of this leads to the consolidation of Web3 and the mainstreaming of the use of digital assets, and making that accessible to everyone, including and particularly people who've been excluded from the formal system and vulnerable populations. And I think we're going to see much more common ways of collaboration between governments that understand this urgency, understand this opportunity, and really move forward with the clarity in regulation that Candace was talking about, and collaborate with this ecosystem of players that are some providing the technology solutions, some bringing in the trust of their communities, and together with institutions like the IDB and others and World Food Program, making this a reality for everyone.
So first of all, I would like to thank my panelists, and I would like to thank the GBBC for this panel. I think that so long as we have people like Candace, Irene, and Bernhard focusing on serving and finding solutions for the underserved through blockchain and other technologies, I think we're going to be doing very, very well by them. And I hope, and including my employer, IOV Labs, I certainly hope we're going to see exponential growth in that area. So I'm very optimistic, and I thank you all, and a happy new year to everyone. With that, we're out.